Hello and welcome to the Year 8 AP1 revision video. This is going to focus on biological processes, which is your biology topic so far, and the atomic structure and periodic table, which is the chemistry topic that you've done so far. So for this video, you need to have your knowledge organizer ready because it's going to link to your knowledge organizer. So you've got two knowledge organizers. This is the biology one here, and this is the chemistry one here. This is also on EduLink. So starting with the biological processes, we have the muscles and skeletons. So we'll start with looking at the skeleton, and this is going to be the main areas that you need to focus on for your revision. So all bones in the body make up your skeleton. The four main functions of the skeleton are: 1, to support the body; 2, to help the body move; and 3, to make blood cells in the bone marrow; and lastly 4, to protect vital organs. So these are the 4 functions of the skeleton. So that is the skeleton done. You may need to label the skeletons, the different parts of the skeleton, which is here. So labeling parts of the skeleton, which is here. We'll then move on to joints. So I'll use different color joints. Now, joints occur between 2 or more bones. So these occur between 2 or more bones. And what these do is these allow the skeleton to bend. And there are 3 different types that you need to know. So the first type we have are something called hinge joints. And hinge joints are the forwards and backwards movements only. So e.g. your knees. So these can go forward and backwards like your knee can. Second type of joint is the ball and socket joint. And these are movement in all directions. So like your shoulders can move in all directions. So e.g. shoulders. And lastly, we have the fixed joints. Now the fixed joints, no movement is allowed. Fixed joints. So no movement is allowed. And an example is your skull, because your skull is not going to be moving around. So no movement allowed, e.g. skull. Okay. In a joint, your bone is protected with cartilage. So if we look at an example of a joint here, not there. Okay, don't have one there. I'll just draw one. So let's say we've got two bones here. The joint can be my purple thing. Now in a joint, the bone, the green one, green equals bones, is protected with cartilage. So cartilage can be this one. So your bones are protected with cartilage. But what's holding these 2 bones together? What holds 2 bones together is called tendons. Not tendons, sorry. I mean ligaments. So holding 2 bones together is called ligaments. So this is repeated here in your knowledge organizer. See here. So we've talked about the joints, tick. We've talked about the skeleton, what it does, how it protects. We've talked about the 3 types of joints here. here and here. And then we've just looked at in a joint, what do we have in an actual joint? The next thing is we're going to be looking at the different types of muscles. So for this, we can look at this here. So we've done this first part. So that is done. Joints. We're now going to look at muscles. So the movements are made by muscles which can pull on the bones. Muscles contract, which means shorten, in order to pull. A muscle is made up of many thin fibers, and each fiber can shorten when the muscle contracts and extend when the muscle relaxes. So this here in this diagram, this is the fibers. So these lines represent the fibers. So this is the fiber contracting, and you can see when it's contracting, it's getting shorter. So this is shorter than this one. When it's contracting, this is when the muscles contract. And when the when the fibers relax and they're long and thin, this is when the muscle is relaxed. A muscle cannot push, it can only pull. So it can only pull. This is why a pair of muscles are needed in a joint, because one of the muscles will pull the joint in one direction and the other pulls the joint back. And this keyword is known as antagonistic muscle pairs. And what this is pair of muscles that work together. So when one contracts, the other relaxes. When one contracts, the other relaxes. Okay, so have a look at this diagram if you want more visual representation of that. This is talking about the tricep muscles. Okay, once you've done that, you can complete this exercise for your revision. So pause the video and have a go. And then use your knowledge organizer to add to your answers. Okay, right. Next we're going to be looking at is respiration. So respiration is involving the lungs, the respiratory system. So there's two words in respiration you might get confused. One respiration is inhalation and exhalation with the lungs. The other respiration we're going to look at is aerobic and anaerobic respiration. Those two are different. Now, our respiratory system is made up of the lungs. So this is our respiratory system. This is not respiration, as in releasing energy. This is separate from that. So oxygen will enter from the air into our lungs. And you can see here that this is a partially filled diagram on this side, and it's full on that side. Both sides of the lungs will have this diagram. This one is just not completely filled in. So what do you need to know about the lungs? So we have the larynx, which is the voice box first. We then have the trachea, which is the windpipe. So imagine the oxygen entering in. It will then go down the trachea and then we'll go into this structure here. Now this structure number 2, sorry, that's 3, because that is 2, is called the bronchus. So the bronchus. The bronchus then, you can see, starts to split into what we call bronchioles. So bronchioles is 4. The bronchioles then, if we keep looking at it, will then start to split into alveoli, 5. And then alveoli is the specialized part where gas exchange will start happening. So this is an example of the alveoli. So this is an alveolus, which is just one alveoli. So this is what is happening. So you could use 2 different colors to help you with the diagram. So blood carrying waste, carbon dioxide enters the lungs. So we have blood here. This is the carbon dioxide that will go back into the lungs. So we exhale. So carbon dioxide will be exhaled. And then we've got from the lungs going into the bloodstream, we have our oxygen in. So carbon dioxide out and oxygen in. So we'll fill in this exercise together for this one. So you can pause the video and have a go, but we'll fill it in now. So the lungs absorb oxygen gas. So we've used that. And excrete waste carbon dioxide. The air is drawn in through the trachea, which is the windpipe, which is kept open at all times by rings of bony material called cartilage. So the cartilage were, in this diagram, these rings there. That's the cartilage. The trachea divides into the right and left bronchus, which branch out into narrower tubes called bronchioles. The bronchioles end in tiny air sacs called alveoli. The alveoli have very thin walls and are surrounded by blood. Here oxygen is absorbed into the capillaries and carbon dioxide passes into the alveoli. And that here is the respiratory system and gas exchange. Okay, you can have a go at this using your knowledge organizer. And this is talking about inhaling and exhaling and what happens with the diaphragm and the rib cage and the muscles involved. So pause the video and have a go. Okay, so now you've played the video, we'll mark our answers. So the diaphragm is a sheet of muscles. The word inhale means to breathe in. The word exhale means to breathe out. The diaphragm and rib muscles both contract, sort of shorten, during inhaling. The volume of the chest increases when we inhale. Air is drawn into the lungs due to a decrease or drop in pressure. The diaphragm and the rib muscles both relax. During exhaling, air is forced out of the lungs due to an increase in pressure. And this is the process of inhaling and exhaling. Okay, right, so the last part is respiration, aerobic and anaerobic respiration. So the chemical reaction happening in the mitochondria is known as respiration, and there are two types. So the two types that we have are aerobic, and this is when glucose will react with oxygen and it will release energy and it will produce waste products, carbon dioxide and water. So in exercise, what happens is we have an increase in blood supply so that we can have more supply of this glucose and oxygen in the blood so that more energy can be released. And the other type of respiration is anaerobic. Anaerobic respiration is when there is not enough supply of oxygen. So then we will have glucose being broken down in the absence of oxygen into lactic acid. This will also release energy, but then the lactic acid, because it can cause cramps, muscle fatigue, needs to be broken down by oxygen. And that is respiration. I would look at your knowledge organizer. Just scroll back up, oopsie, two up. And I will look at respiration a bit more. Okay, so I'm going to move now onto the periodic table. If you want to look at more on respiration, I would recommend you do this exercise here and then use your knowledge organizer to fill in the gaps. Okay, so let's go into the chemistry section of the test. So the chemistry section is going to split into the periodic table, so the groups in the periodic table, properties of that, and then looking at elements and mixtures. So I'll start with the periodic table. So you've got the periodic table here and you have it in your planner as well. And you can see you've got these groups here. So 1, 7, and 0. These are the groups that you need to know. So group 1 is known as the alkali metals. Alkali metals are very reactive, and the reactivity will increase down the group. So reactivity increases down group 1. So this is the chemical properties. Physical properties of group 1, I'll do it blue. They are very soft. So they are very soft. And we can say they are, they have a low density, so they can float on water. Okay, and the next group that you need to know is group 7. So group 7 are known as halogens. Halogens are, the reactivity decreases down the group. So which one's the most reactive halogen? Fluorine, because it's right at the top. So reactivity decreases down group 7. We can also say that displacement reactions will occur. So this is when a more reactive halogen will displace the less reactive. And the physical properties, these are non-metals. So they are, we look at the properties of non-metals, you need to link it to that. Okay, righty. So moving down to this section here, I'm just going to do this in a different color. And this is a very small part. And this is the difference between elements. So element, compound, and mixture. Element, compound, and mixture. Okay. So I'll start with elements. So let's use an example of sodium as an element. So we can represent these 3 as diagrams like this. So an element is made up of a single type of atom. So there's only one atom. So it's made up of a single type of atom. So that is an element. A compound, for example, let's use sodium still. And we'll use oxide, sodium oxide. You can see that a compound it's not just the same atom, it's not the same element. So it's different atoms of an element. It could be the same element as well, but it's chemically joined together. That's the key word, chemically joined. So it's chemically joined together. It's different atoms and they are of different elements and they are chemically joined together. But a mixture, let's say we've still got sodium oxide. So that was our compound. But now I've added some carbon. And I've also added some, let's say, iron. These are all, so this, and this, these are all made up of different elements and they are not chemically joined together. This, even though this is a compound and these are here, these are elements, they are still all not chemically joined together. So the definition of a mixture could be elements or compounds not chemically joined together. So a mixture of elements or compounds not chemically joined together. So not joined chemically together. So it's different to elements. Okay, so very last part now. And by the way, I didn't go into too much detail on group, choose a different color, on group 0. which are the noble gases, because I want to keep this video short as possible. So the noble gases, I will look into your knowledge organizer for more detail. Okay. So, and the last part we're going to look at are the properties of metals and properties of non-metals, and how they are different, how they are similar, and how this makes them have different uses. So, with a highlighter, most metals, I'll do metals in green, are shiny and are solids at room temperature. They are good conductors of heat and electricity. So some of the uses you can see are electronics. Because they're good conductors of heat, they could be used as cooking appliances. A few are magnetic, so they could be used in electromagnets, for example. They are often flexible. We call this word malleable, so we can bend them into different shapes. Whereas non-metals, if we use a different color, pink, non-metals vary in their properties. They usually have low melting points. Many are gases. Most are poor conductors of heat and electricity. None are magnetic, and they are often brittle. So a lot of the properties are not similar to metals. For example, a lot of the non-metals that we have, like a group 7, and these are more involved in, for example, not salts, so are halogens. One use of chlorine, so chlorine, which is a group 7, it's a non-metal, is in treating water. So sanitation, water treatment, killing bacteria, so it's used in swimming pools. Whereas the metals, like we said, are electronics, cooking appliances, they're malleable, so I can use it in building. Whereas I wouldn't be able to use chlorine to make a building because it's brittle. Also, poor conductors of heat and electricity, and most of them are gases. They're not solid at room temperature, so that's where the uses are different. So examples are here. So for each diagram, write down if the element is a metal or a non-metal based on what it is. So if we look at this one here, iron, I can see is with them linked to the magnet. So iron is definitely a metal because some metals are magnetic. This one here, the bulb lights up. So what is copper? So if the bulb lights up, that means it conducts electricity. So copper is a metal. This one here, we've got a gas jar. Gas jar already automatically, I'm thinking that's a non-metal because non-metals are gases at room temperature. Therefore, bromine is a non-metal. The other thing I can do to make this easier is I can only even look at my periodic table. So you can see that on this side of our periodic table, so on the right side of the periodic table, we have our non-metals, and on the left, we have our metals. Lastly, sulfur is brittle, so that's telling me it's a non-metal, and it does not make the bulb light, so that is a non-metal. And that is the end of our revision video. You could do this exercise to practice the properties of metals, and then use your knowledge organizer here to mark your answers. So I would really use the knowledge organizers to revise, make flashcards and mind maps, and then go through these exercises here by yourself. Okay, thank you very much for watching the video.